Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Raina Brown. I am one of the co-directors of Emerging Arts Professionals, and I'm here joined by our new co-director that's joining us, Natalia. Um,
Hi guys.
we are hosting a Q&A today to answer any questions that folks may have about our fellowship program. So I'm going to do just like a brief overview, kind of in my own words. I know the information online is pretty lengthy, so I want to kind of summarize in my own words what the fellowship program is, and then of course answer any questions that y'all may have for me about the program. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Do, 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 do. All right. So I'm gonna drop these links into the chat when I'm done sharing my screen to the actual application as well as to um, the landing page for our upcoming cohort. But I'm going to be talking through this landing page on our website as I describe the fellowship. So, our fellowship program is a 9-month fellowship that we spend with a cohort of about 10 to 15 artists, administrators in the Bay Area. Our cohort is specific to folks in the Bay because we have in-person as well as virtual offerings. So it's a hybrid program. And all of the dates that we'll be meeting are in the application. So you can see everything ahead of time. We want to make it really clear what we're asking of folks before they sign up or apply for the program. This program is not paid, though we do offer a very small travel stipend for folks who are participating, as well as we cater all of our in-person sessions to make sure everyone is full and has their food needs met. Our intention for our fellowship is a couple different avenues. One, to build the community within our network and provide a place for us to get to know each other and build stronger connections that can support us in the work that we're doing in the field beyond our fellowship program. And then we also want to use the space as an opportunity to learn from one another and practice some of the tools that EAP has developed over the course of the past 15 years. Um, Emerging Arts Professionals is an organization that was born out of and is constantly led by arts administrators who are very active in the field and active in their own arts practices as well. And so every single fellowship cohort that you will see on our website in our archives have had a slightly different experience, and that's kind of a beautiful thing about the program because it's able to be adaptive to the times and the needs of this moment. And so each cohort looks a little different, though they all do have in common the grounding of us all being arts administrators, all being in a space to build community with one another and put into practice these different tools that EAP has developed over time. And aside from the tools that EAP is sharing in our curriculum, we also use our fellowship program as an opportunity for arts administrators and culture workers to do some project-based research in small groups. And so EAP has these different affinity topics that sort of guide us in how we are activating different aspects of our work and our field together. And so each cohort focuses in on one of these four affinity topics, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. Um, but I bring that up because with our projects, we have an opportunity to activate all of the affinity topics at one time, even though each cohort is focusing in on one specific topic. So this is my little baby working from home with me. Say hi, Kamari. What's up? So I'm going to take a moment to talk about our four affinity topics. We have cultural equity. We have creative city, regenerative practices, and arts and capital. And with these four different affinity topic areas, we're able to provide a container for our fellows to dive into specific research projects. On this landing page for this year's for this year's application, on the right side, you can look at our past cohort projects that dive into each of these specific affinity topic areas. Um, and so that's a nice way to see the most recent cohort, the projects they were able to focus on as they looked at the intersection of our different affinity topics, and created something to share out that is very flexible, um, and was able to connect with the folks in that project in the way that they saw fit. And so even though there's some aspects of the program that are, I don't want to say rigid, but are pretty consistent. The ways that our cohort members activate those parts of the program are very flexible. Um, and so you get a chance to sort of personalize your experience with us in that way. So, the last piece that I want to describe about our fellowship program, again, as I mentioned, it's a hybrid program over the course of 9 months, but we do have one 2-day in-person engagement where we take all of our fellows on a retreat together, to deepen their relationships to one another, have time to disconnect and really pour into self-care, for ourselves in a field that, as I'm sure we all can relate to, can be really easy to burn out in, um, and sort of rejuvenate ourselves in that way in preparation for breaking into these smaller groups for our projects, our research projects that happen in the second half of the cohort. Um, so that's kind of like, in my own words, what the program is. Um, there's more specifics I can share about, what exactly are these tools that we offer within EAP? How might those tools be activated? Um, you can look through a lot of our materials on our website, but I wanted to do a kind of just a broad overview of what this project is. The best fit for this fellowship program are artist administrators. So we don't specifically cater only to folks who have an arts practice. We are really trying to center administrators, folks that are working, in the field or working in cultural spaces in on the administrative side of things, to equip us with the tools to more easily navigate these spaces and also rely on one another as we move through these spaces together. I also want to call attention in our actual application that there's some options for how folks respond. So if you would like to, respond in writing to the application questions here, I have to click through, so I'm not going to go through the pages now. But you have the option to respond in writing to our application questions, as well as, record yourself. You can submit a video response, or an audio file as well. So we tried to give folks some options for the application and also keep it pretty concise in what we're asking of folks, um, as they're responding, because we don't want to take a whole bunch of your time before you're in the program. Um, Factors that we take into consideration when creating our cohort, besides, as I mentioned, focusing in on arts administrators and culture workers in the Bay Area, is making sure that we have a as much of a diverse group as we can. So, for example, our last fellowship cohort had fellowship participants from not only San Francisco, but also Oakland, Marin County, San Jose, and we even had a fellowship participant out of Bakersfield, which of course is not the Bay Area, but the work that that fellow was doing was centered in the Bay Area. So we were able to make the connection in that way. So we try to get a broad sweep of folks from different areas as much as we can, in selecting our cohort and who will be working together for this period of time. So that is a broad overview of the fellowship program. Um, I'm happy to answer any specific questions that folks have, or dig deeper into any of the things that I mentioned to just bring some clarity to you all, um, for our program. Also, I will put the news out with you all and then promote it in, um, promote it publicly once I share this recording, but we will be extending the deadline for a week for the fellowship program. So you'll have some extra time to apply. I see JK. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, sure. And sorry I can't be on camera, but thank you both, Reina and Natalia. Congratulations on the new position. Um, quick question. There's a couple different angles that I'm thinking of applying with, and maybe it's all of them, but one is I run the Bay Area Book Festival, and I feel like the ins and outs of running a festival, especially at scale, are really um, complicated and not shared very widely. And so I'd love to demystify that process to invite other people into the space of creating, cultural festivals wherever they may be. Similarly with publishing, like with my previous work with Nomadic Press, I'd like to share, some of that work. But then there's this other project that Natalia knows about. It's called the Taproot Institute, and I'm hoping to give folks resources, community arts groups and artists, resources, and kind of a centralized hub where folks can learn about negotiating for community benefits with private developers and cities. Um, and I think what excites me most about the program is all the learning, of course, that's going to come from meeting all these amazing folks. So I don't know. It's not really a question. I just want to throw that out there and see if any of that resonates with kind of how this flows, or if it seems like it's not really a fit.
Yeah, thank you for that, for sharing the kind of work that you're involved in. I think just from what I've heard now, it seems like you'd be a great fit for the program. I think it's definitely aligned in the kind of space curation that you're developing with the festival, as well as your intention to create an opportunity to share out different resources for artists. I think both of those things in practice do align with what it means to be an arts administrator and culture worker, which are two very broad terms. So thank you for like asking specifically with the roles that you're taking up right now. Yeah, I think that totally connects. And I think the tools that we have to offer through the fellowship program um, could be of service to you in both of those spaces. We offer, for example, we have a peer coaching curriculum to support folks in navigating conversations with individuals and potentially as well with groups and supporting them in thinking through and implementing projects and ideas. Basically like kind of walking someone through their mind. I know if you're anything like me, sometimes we can get in a spiral in our mind that's kind of stagnant. And so our peer coaching tool really helps us to support each other um, without having the added hierarchy or power dynamic of trying to tell someone what to do, but talking them through coming to their own conclusion and discovery of what the next step might be for whatever question that they're grappling with in that peer coaching moment that you decide to use. We also have a number of different folks in our network that are connected to publishing, as well as supporting artists and culture workers with different kinds of resources in the field. So I can imagine just being a part of the network could be a beautiful tool to the kind of work that you're doing and making the connections that you need to advance your work.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks for asking.
Hi. I'm also gonna stay off camera if that's okay.
Yeah, no worries.
But yeah, this program sounds really exciting. I have, especially coming off of the artist adaptability cohorts, a lot of like themes that we were exploring within those projects, within the queer nightlife community and economy, that I'm really interested in through that process. Like, have realized what a deeper need there is for research and development and yeah, thinking more broadly about some of the like structural issues that have led to like the situation that my community finds itself in, where we're like losing spaces by the day. Um, so uh, I think thematically, I'm pretty clear about what I'm hoping to get out of this, but I'm curious more functionally in terms of the program, um, like the time commitment, the expectation for participation, how like the pipeline to, um, like getting in contact with other folks in the field and like further research is sort of like functionally part of this program.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing up the question about time, which can be is such a challenge for folks in our field for sure. So as I mentioned, it's a 9-month program. It starts in October and spans through June. Um, our annual convening, which is emergence, happens at the first week of June, and that is the sort of commencement ceremony for our fellowship program. And so the first half of the fellowship program from October to January, we're really focused on um, offering EAP's tools and trying them on, bringing in guest speakers around our affinity topic, having lots of group discussions and things of that nature in that first half. And then the retreat happens at the end of January. And it's at the retreat where we break into those smaller groups, and you'll continue the remainder of the fellowship program in those small groups doing your research with one another. And so that can be, um, I would say, the entire span of the fellowship, roughly about 8 hours a month. You can anticipate working with your group, whether that's us completely as a cohort or working with your individual research groups. Um, I would say a heavier time commitment, like higher on the 8 hour span in the second half, and probably more about 5 hours within the first half each month of the fellowship program. Um, in June, at the commencement ceremony, is when fellows are expected to be a part of emergence all day long. So that is like a really lengthy, it's a long day. I think we started at about 9 a.m. this year and then went until I would say about 3 o'clock after we cleaned everything, like doing cleanup and things like that, 3, 4 o'clock. So it was a full day. We had food and breaks built in, but that was, I would say, the heaviest lift of the program as far as time commitment and like energy expectations of being present. Each month, we have one virtual meeting and one in-person meeting. The virtual meetings are about 90 minutes in length, and the in-person meetings are 4 hours on Saturdays, and that includes an hour of a lunch break in that time. Um, and we ask folks not to miss more than 3 sessions. And that doesn't come out of like a desire to be punitive, rather really focusing in on the cohort building. Um, and just like so much is packed into those sessions, whether it's the 90-minute sessions or those Saturday sessions. And when someone misses one, it's really hard to catch folks up. So we ask everyone in the cohort not to miss more than 3 sessions and to communicate um, a need to miss anything in advance. But that's an outline of time commitment. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, also curious in terms of like the research element, like is there an expectation at emergence to be like reporting on research or findings or like what's the purpose of the participation in that program?
Yeah, thank you for that. So, when Emerging Arts Professionals was initially created, the fellows in the fellowship program were running the whole organization. So like the way that the fellowship has been molded over time um has changed drastically. So we're not asking the fellows to run the whole organization. Now we have executive directors, co-directors to do that lifting. But just to give you a sense of like the relationship between the fellowship and emergence, um, the fellows would basically curate not only the everyday tasks of the organization, but would also create this annual convening for the network to bring arts and culture workers together across the Bay Area for this yearly event. Um, and so what once was the fellows doing all of that legwork has now turned into a specific professional development program for that is the fellowship. Um, and then emergence being an avenue for us to celebrate the commencement or graduation ceremony for the fellows and for the fellows to share out what they have found over the course of the 9 months that they've spent together. So it's kind of like our way, EAP's way of keeping a strong pulse of what's happening in our communities, what's going on in the network, what are the conversations that we should be having and bringing to light as we gather more folks in our network. The theme for every emergence comes out of the fellowship program as well. So observing the kinds of conversations and things that are timely in this moment, and using that as the sort of guiding star for our annual convening. We look to the fellowship program for that guidance as well. And so the fellows with the research projects do share out at emergence. Um, this last year, we had 1 hour for fellows to present, and we had 3 different groups. So each group shared about roughly 15 to 20 minutes about what they decided to do their research project on, what they developed from that research project, and then had a bit of a Q&A with the audience. And then we congratulated the fellows with like an ending toast for emergence and gave out like cute certificates basically. And so on this page, I'll drop it in the chat now, you'll be able to see the projects that each of those small groups presented on in our last emergence that we just had. One group created a zine that came out really beautiful. So we printed that out for folks at the event, but we have a PDF version online for you to check out. Another group made a short film about Creative City and our relationship to art making in the Bay Area. And then our last group did a survey about regenerative practices for our community and created a slide deck to share out what they found in their survey. And that's just like an example of the research that was done in this past year.
Cool. Thank you for that history and clarity. That's super helpful. And then in terms of like the research aspect of it, is there any expectation for like further research reporting or like gathering of data beyond emergence, or is like that sort of the final project and product of this fellowship?
Yeah, emergence is the final thing. After that, there's no expectation of continuing any research. Yeah, beyond that. But we have found that the groups that work together throughout the fellowship program sometimes create new ways of collaborating beyond the fellowship program, but that's just like totally if folks want to do that.
Cool.
EAP has affinity circles that we create that often stem from the fellowship program. For example, we had a couple years ago, our fellowship was focused on regenerative practices. Um, and the fellows decided that they wanted to continue to hold space for arts administrators and culture workers to just work on their own artistic something once a month for an hour. And so it came into fruition that EAP would hold a Zoom call once a month for an hour for folks to log on and just like co-work artistically. And at the end of the call, share out something that they created. So some like very low lift, but that was just an example of like something that came up out of the fellowship program that folks wanted to continue because they felt a need and a desire to continue doing that work. But there's no expectation beyond June for the fellowship program.
Love all of that. Thank you.
Yeah, JK.
Yeah, can you I was reading there's guest speakers that come through occasionally. Can you give us some examples of who those guest speakers have been
Yeah, that's a
or
great
what
question.
field they're from too? Yeah.
Totally. So I'll use the example of the cohort that just finished up. They in their research, had an opportunity to propose guest speakers that they wanted to have come in and speak to the entire cohort. And the guest speakers that they chose were connected to the affinity topic that they were discussing and doing research on, and bringing someone in that had a relationship to some of their big research questions. Um, and so I can't speak exactly to who those folks were because I was out on maternity leave for the second half of this past fellowship, in all transparency. Um, but I use that example to say the fellows got to ask for the guest speakers that they wanted to bring in, um, as it pertained to like discussions and work that we were already doing together. In the first half of the fellowship, we had Dominique, who's the executive director at EABA, come in and have a conversation with our fellows, because our topic was focusing on arts and capital and thinking through like how do we support the economic sustainability of artists and arts administrators in the Bay Area. And so we wanted her to come in and talk about some of the advocacy that she was doing supporting teaching artists in the Bay Area. And so she came in and like we had her as a guest speaker to talk about that. But we do really value and prioritize the requests that our fellows are bringing into the program, and really use that as a guide to how we curate the curriculum and adapt the curriculum in real time.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Can I ask a question of JK and Mama Celeste? This would be the time. So my question is regarding like the program, and I know Mama Celeste, you were part of the artist adaptability circles. You're wrapping that up. Um, but do you know folks who have graduated from the program or have been participants of the EAP Fellowship?
I think Quan Booth at some point was in EAP. I'm not sure. I saw them on in pictures and stuff, so I don't know if Quan was a recent fellow or not.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, and just folks who you met through AAC. Um, I'm always amazed by like looking through the photos or different mixers and seeing some of my most favorite colleagues in the field being like, yeah, I graduated, I was an EAP fellow like 10 years ago, you know? And they're like some of the most knowledgeable, folks that I know. But a lot of folks got their start through EAP when they were transitioning with their career, or also just looking for networks of folks where if they're in some spaces where they couldn't ask the kinds of questions that they felt more comfortable asking in a peer space and those kinds of things. So I was just curious to know if you've had conversations with folks who have gone through the program to kind of understand what their takeaway was. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is as we go through the list of the folks who have been part of the program, so many folks have gone on to do really major work in the field afterwards. And the both of you, Mama Celeste and JK, I see you as like really already like, you're always emerging because you're always like changing and looking to see like how you can contribute to the field, right? So it's like not just this perspective of being like it not necessarily needing to be a young arts administrator that is new to the field, but rather from this perspective of like the folks that I see come through end up getting like the incubation that they needed at that time in their career. And then we're able to jump off and do like really amazing things and even find partnership with folks to do to work on projects, to start organizations, to do all kinds of things. So I'm really excited at the thought of the both of you considering this because I can only imagine what a little bit of time dedication to the projects that you already know that you want to do, but maybe just need a little bit of that like community support, and also like that container to take you to make sure that you fulfill the goals that you have for this new projects that you're kind of that are like a glimmer in your eye right now, and you know you want to do it, and have like those different perspectives to so that when you're out and you put it out there to the community or to the field, it's already gone through like so many different tools, lenses, and frameworks. And so that's, I just wanted to share that with you, if you didn't know people in particular. But Mama Celeste, you might be able to imagine just based on the powerhouses that are in the artist adaptability circles. You know, you might imagine like the kind of work that unfolds when you're just around some really wonderful people that really are trying to do um, the work that the field needs at this time, which is why it's so emerging and emergent. Anyway, thanks for letting me just kind of explain that a little bit, because I really want to encourage the both of you to apply. And even though I'm super green to this role, and I'm still getting trained by my predecessor, Rhiannon, at this time, just based on everything that I've learned and continue to learn on a regular basis, I want to encourage you to apply.
Thank you so much for saying all that, Natalia.
Mhm. Powerhouses here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it feels like a full circle moment with this cohort because when I was a fellow, I came in under the affinity topic of cultural equity. And then after the fellowship, I came on as a co-director of the organization. So I went through all of the other three affinity topics and now we're back at cultural equity. So it feels cool to be back in a position to not only be a part of the conversation, but now be facilitating that conversation because I remember when I was a fellow, I felt like I was in such a silo and I did not have people to talk to that could really truly empathize and understand what I was going through as an arts administrator. Um, and then being in the fellowship, I was like, ah, like I could finally exhale. Like I found my people, you know, like these folks get it. And really start creating a coalition of like-minded folks from that point forward. So I'm excited to hold this space again. And hopefully create a container for people to feel seen and have time to disconnect so we can have the creativity that we need to develop these new ideas, new avenues of how to move forward in a more equitable way.
Love it. Very sweet. Full circle moment. All
We love
right.
Virgo. Any other
Yeah.
questions that folks have before our time together ends?
I think you answered all my questions, and just tons of appreciation for just even holding the space and letting us ask those questions that we did.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for logging on and being here. I'm gonna stay on until 1, just in case anyone else that signed up trickles in and has a question. But if there's no other questions from you all, feel free to log off, and I hope to see your application in our pool.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. You
Thank
definitely will.
you.
Love it.
Bye.
Thank you both.
Thank you.